What's up, guys? In this video, we're going to be discussing how to respond to the insurance company whenever they give you a lowball offer. And this is the same exact technique that we use in our office to counter the insurance company. So listen up, because this is going to be vital to understand if you want to raise the offer from the insurance company. Number one, the very first thing that you want to do before you try to negotiate with the insurance company about their valuation or how they came to their valuation, before you do any of that, what you want to do is make sure that both you and the adjuster are on the same page. First and foremost, you need to confirm how many medical bills did they receive. A lot of times when we send a demand to the insurance company, also called an offer of compromise, and we itemize all of the bills that our client has incurred, a lot of times they miss many of those medical bills. They don't even have them. It's not even input in their system. So you will be wasting your time trying to negotiate the value of your case when the adjuster doesn't even have the same amount of total bills that your client or you have incurred. So the very first question is, just want to make sure that you have all the bills that we have submitted. I have 17,434. Is that what you have? And if they say no, then before you negotiate, you want to make sure that you send them all of the bills. And you may have done so already, but you got to do it again because they missed it, or maybe it didn't go through, or the scanner didn't work properly. So make sure they have all of your bills. If they say yes, then you can go to number two. I want to make sure that the total amount of the policy is $25,000, if that's the total amount of the policy. You want to make sure that you actually submitted a valid demand. If you actually send a demand for more than the policy or what is available on the policy, then you've submitted an invalid demand. So you need to ask this question. I want to make sure that the policy that your insured has is $25,000 and it hasn't been depleted in any way to ensure that we submitted a valid demand. If the answer is, oh no, actually there's another person that we paid out, and so we actually don't have $25,000 on your case, we have $23,454. So you need to resubmit the demand for what is available on the policy. Number three, you need to ask this question. And I just want to make sure that there was no allocation of fault on my client's behalf. Or if you're asking that question, you would say, I just want to make sure there's no allocation of fault on my behalf, is there? Right? And you got to be really precise in asking this question in this way, because if you say, just want to make sure that you have assessed 100% liability on your insured, adjusters kind of get a little anxious when you put it that way. They don't want to ever say 100% liability. They want to just say, yes, we've accepted liability without saying the words or the number 100%. So you actually inverse the question. You say it as follows. I want to make sure that there's no allocation of fault on my behalf. Naturally, what I found is they say, oh no, we've accepted 100%. And if they don't say 100%, then you just ask the follow-up question. Because, you know, sometimes insurance companies will put 5% or 10% on the other side. And then they will say, oh no, we've accepted 100. Make sure you ask the inverse of that question. So that's number three, ensuring that they haven't allocated any fault on you. And if they have, you need to ask them, how did they come to that conclusion? If the police officer who investigated the scene of the wreck didn't put any contributing fault on you. So you need to kind of get to the bottom of that. Number four, you need to ask this question. Well, is there any dispute as to my client or me actually getting injured in this crash? Is there any dispute with respect to my neck injury? They may say something to the effect of, well, it was a soft tissue injury, right? So in response to that, you would say, are you suggesting it was a pain-free experience? And they would say, no, we're not saying that. We're just saying it's soft tissue. So you've done that part, right? Now go to the next body part. Is there any dispute with respect to my low back injury? And you don't have to say the word herniation. You don't have to say the word edema. The preliminary question is there any dispute with respect to my low back injury being caused from this wreck? This is why an attorney is good to be on your side, because the attorney would know all of the medical terminology. So for example, if your MRI report says that there is a herniation superimposed on a disc bulge, and the adjuster says, well, we see that there are bulging discs there, and bulging discs are not caused by a traumatic event. That just happens with normal aging. The attorney, or you, can respond by saying, that's right, there are bulging discs there. But in this particular level, at L4, L5, there's a herniation superimposed on the bulge, which means that even though this person has the gradual onset of pain or gradual deterioration of his disc due to them bulging due to gravitational forces and aging and all the wear and tear on a person's spine, on top of that, beyond the bulging discs, there's a herniation. And a herniation is a recent injury caused by a recent traumatic event. Now, if you don't know the terminology, it's going to be very hard to respond to the adjuster, but that's something that would be vital to know how to do. And then one of the favorite arguments adjusters make: we reduced these bills to what is reasonable and customary. Your response to that can be a couple of different responses. Number one, you can say, wait, so the insurance company wants a discount on the bills that I got? And they were going to say, well, we're only obligated to pay what's reasonable and customary. And so your second response would be, based on which data points did the insurance company assess that these bills are unreasonable? And I can tell you this: there are no databases that actually have an aggregate of data points that is outside Medicare and Medicaid pricing. Therefore, when they use these data points to say, well, we used what is usual and customary, reasonable and customary, usual and customary, they're basing it on Medicare rates. If your client or you don't have Medicare, you're not a Medicare recipient, you're not eligible for Medicare, it is totally irrelevant to be bound by Medicare pricing. That's like somebody who doesn't have health insurance. They go to the hospital because they've just been rear-ended by a negligent, reckless driver, and they go to the hospital and they have a $50,000 bill. The insurance company cannot come in and say, oh, that bill would have been $3,000 or $4,000 if you had health insurance. But the guy doesn't have health insurance. The guy doesn't have Medicare. So for them to say, well, we discounted the rate or reduced the rate when they really want a discount, I like to use in my counter demands the word discount because they want discount justice. If they use Medicare pricing, that's totally irrelevant and is totally inappropriate when your client, or you for that matter, is not eligible for Medicare or is not a Medicare recipient. Last but not least, they can say, well, we don't really know if the injury was caused by this wreck. Now, hopefully in the medical records that you have provided them, the medical provider that you went to, either the chiropractor, the physical therapist, the reading radiologist on the MRI, the orthopedic doctor, or the pain management doctor, they have said something in the medical records that dictates that you were injured or you began having symptoms of pain following the wreck. Hopefully one of them did. Now, usually the medical providers that our clients go to, they know that they need to make an assessment, make a determination on whether or not the wreck caused the injury. And so in the records that we provide to the insurance company, it would have such documentation because they are trying to find any analysis or any correlation between the wreck and the injury. That's what they're trying to find. If they don't find it, they won't put it. So hopefully in your medical documentation, you have such causative statements that say that. So if they say, oh, well, we don't really know, it's a question mark. And I'm like, what credentials do you have? And I usually say it in a much more nicer way. I say it, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but what type of medical training do you have to make that assessment? Because from the medical records, we have a doctor of chiropractic, we have a physical therapist, we have a MD reading radiologist, and we have another MD orthopedic surgeon or pain management doctor. We have at least 4 people that all say that the injury or the symptoms of the injury was caused by this recent traumatic event, i.e. the wreck that occurred on this date. And yet you say you don't know? How is that equivalent between a person who has no medical knowledge and training versus 4 medical professionals? Now they may say, well, we sent it to our medical team to review it. And then your response would be, well, what are the qualifications of this medical team? They usually will say it's a nurse that reviewed it. And so you would respond, are you saying that a nurse is equivalent to a medical doctor with respect to their experience and training? So these are the common counters. Now, bear in mind, this is the most important thing of all of this. In no part in your conversation with your adjuster, verbally, do you counter. So if they say, hey, we're only offering you $12,000, you never say, well, I'm thinking about taking 20. No, this is not the conversation for that. The negotiation in terms of giving them another offer, it only happens on paper. In the conversation that you're having with the adjuster, which we call the first conversation with adjuster protocol, you are only trying to understand where they're coming from. You are only trying to make sure that you're concretizing the position that they are putting themselves in. A lot of times they don't like to say a position. They'll just say, well, this is what, this is our first offer and we have room to negotiate. You're gonna hear that again and again and again. Don't fall into that trap of negotiating prematurely. Make sure that you get their position, make sure that it's articulated, and if you're in the state of Georgia, we are a one-party state, so you don't need their permission to record the phone call. You don't even have to say that you're recording the phone call. As long as you're a participant to the phone conversation, you can record. So in our office, all of these conversations are recorded, and you want to pin them to a position so that you can use it in your counter demand. And that is the way that we use in our office to counter lowball offers. To see a real-life scenario where we took our client's offer from $1,000 to $250,000, just click on this video to see how we did it.